Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and on this week's episode, I'm joined by Teagasc specialist Catherine Keena to get an update on the new Agri-Climate Rural Environment Scheme, also known as ACRES. Catherine, the ACRES deadline has closed last week. How many farmers have applied?
Almost 47,000 applications were submitted. So that was a huge effort by advisors throughout the country. It was like 3 years work in one.
For this new 1.5 billion flagship agri-environmental scheme, is that more or less the number of farmers that were expected to apply?
Well, the target was 50,000, but the target for the first year was 30,000 farmers. Apart from the budget, there's obviously concerns with coping with the workload. This scheme has now moved to a kind of a different version. We have results-based payments for, let's say, all the farmers in the cooperation project and for some of the farmers in the general. It's like as if there's two schemes, Catherine. So out of the 47 odd thousand that applied, almost 18,000 of them were under the cooperation project, and I think 27,000 or so were in the general scheme. So it's like as if there's two schemes. So, and even in the general scheme, some of the actions, one of the action, the low input grassland, is also a results based, which entails the advisor going out scoring those parcels next summer.
What was the breakdown, Catherine, between tier 1, 2 and 3 farmers?
Don't know that now. Maybe the department probably have the figures, but I'm not sure what that breakdown is. That's obviously only relevant to the general scheme. The cooperation scheme has its own prioritisation schedule, depending on the priorities on the farm, whether they have lots of special things. We're now at least giving credit for farmers, giving credit and valuing if they have areas of breeding waders or areas of natura or high water status or, farmland birds or commonage, different things. So in the CP areas, there's a different prioritisation. But you're right, going back to the tiers then for the general scheme. So it's all in the melting pot at the moment.
And how soon do you think farmers will find out if they were successful?
I think it will be into January now before the department. We expect it'll be January when individual farmers will receive a letter to say that they have or have not been accepted into the scheme. So there's nothing we can do now, only wait and see for the next few weeks and into the new year. And then I think subsequently the department then a few weeks later will send an actual copy of the approved plan to the farmers who are successful.
And once the farmers find out that they are successful, when do they have to start implementing the actions that they've selected with their advisor?
Well, it'll be after that date anyway, because obviously you cannot do anything. And in fact, even farmers who are keen to get ahead on planting hedges and trees, they're not allowed to do that until they get approval into the scheme. So while the scheme will start from the 1st of January, I think there's no immediate pressure. The dates will follow then as to when farmers must do the actions, like put up the fencing, like do the hedges and trees, actions like that. So that will be the work for January. It'll be very important then to know, depending on the actions. There's 34 actions, Catherine, so it's hard to give a simple answer, if you know what I mean, because there's different deadlines for each of the actions then after that.
Most definitely. And are there any particular actions that were selected above others among farmers?
We know in general the ones that were popular were the grassland measures where it suited extensive farming, and the riparian zones. There's a huge emphasis now on water quality, so it's fantastic to think that a lot of our rivers and dry drains even which lead to the rivers will be protected with riparian zones. That was a particularly popular one, and hopefully that will have fairly immediate benefits for the environment. We really do need a protective layer between the farmed area in the middle of the field and the water, and that's what this scheme will certainly, hopefully, push that a bit further down the line.
And if a farmer finds out in January that they're unsuccessful in this tranche of the ACRES scheme, when can they apply again?
The application will be more or less towards the end of the year again. Now, obviously, they can be in touch with their advisor and drawing up the plans. But the actual plan won't be able to be finalised until after the BPS, after the digitisation. So we really are into next autumn again. But obviously, both farmers, if they're not successful, or more importantly, Catherine, I think all the farmers out there who didn't apply, and I'd say advisors didn't have the opportunity to go and really encourage, farmers, explain in theory. I mean, I suppose in my head, every farmer could be in the scheme and could find something useful. So there's a lot of farmers there, I think, will be looking at it, could be looking at it, but really it's next autumn. But just to be kind of keeping an eye on it and watching out for how other farmers are finding it, that will be, the proof will be in the pudding, I suppose, won't it, as to whether farmers find it good or not.
For farmers at the moment, what advice have you for them at this stage?
At this stage, I suppose, to be getting ready, to be thinking about, without finally committing to, definitely thinking about the trees and hedging, ordering them, working out what quantities are needed, and finding sources of Irish provenance. So while the trees and hedges deadline isn't until 2024, some farmers will love to get ahead and get a small bit of planting done in 2023. So, as I said, I wouldn't go do anything. I wouldn't place any orders, but I would be inquiring and getting myself ready if I was doing trees or hedges. And it may suit me to do some of that before kind of the planting season runs out in March this year. For anybody that's cutting hedges, getting their hedges cut, which is the time season we'll be doing it now, they must remember that the hedges in the parcels that have been chosen for acres must be allowed grow up a little. Any of those topped hedges, which are very low, must be allowed grow up during the acres. So that's very important if they're getting the hedges cut from now on, if you think you're going to be in acres. And so they'd be some of the key ones, Catherine.
That's great. Thanks very much, Catherine. We await further updates from the department for the scheme if farmers are successfully accepted into the scheme.
Yes, thanks very much, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Catherine for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.